Oh, I'm in college now. I mean, I love it though. People are all like, imagine spending money on that stuff and feeling flexing about it, and I'm just kind of like sitting. They're like, You'd be surprised how much of the world, still ultimately cares about how well I do here and cares about credentialism. But it's also just I will acknowledge that I can learn how to solder on the internet, but I want you to observe my hands if you can, if the camera will catch it. It doesn't seem to do a great job of picking up on it, but there's an ever so slight tremor in it, and I have such bad skill writing with a pen and pencil. Like I've got teachers that say that they can read it because they're used to reading bad handwriting, but when I was in the K through 12 system, God, those were the awful experience back then. But when I was going up through the system, they kind of formally gave up on teaching me to write legibly. I mean, I have teachers that kept trying and trying and trying, and by sixth grade, like I had mastered some degree of it, but what I had to do was press the pencil really hard into the paper, in order to maintain some semblance of control over it with leverage pressing into the pencil. So it had to be somewhat dull. Otherwise, the tip would break. And so you had to dull them so that they could actually write that way. So this was an issue. And by the time I was done, I mean, my hand would be cramping in pain every day that I came home. So I was very frustrated by the amount of pain and as such that I had to endure during my later years and everything, and so it became just a sort of a I'll type it out and print it up and submit the typed documents for it thing. But having issues like that, I mean, it's crazy too, because fine motor control doesn't like manifest in the same way, no matter what task it is. I think part of what kind of ignited my willingness to explore was that for some reason, despite not being able to write very well, I can thread a needle unbelievably, and that's like ultra fine detail stuff. And I've had to be the one to do it in this household multiple times when it came to hemming up clothing and everything, because one tore a hole in somebody's, pants or such, just sewing things back together so that they'll last a little bit longer before we have to ultimately replace them to just prolong the life of clothing. The So anyways, rambling about that, but because of that, I've kind of wanted to get an instructor that will watch me, as I work an iron, a soldering iron and everything, and have them hang over me as I work, so that there's actually some hands-on with somebody that's teaching students in person, and that's been the thing. And so yeah, I've been in college, like so anyways, I'm a college student. I just withdrew from math. I have to self-study with Khan Academy, I guess, but um so anyways, so the thing is, I'm engaged again, and I'm a student, and I'm just like, they're all making fun of me, like, "Oh, imagine spending that much money and flexing about that." I'm like, actually, it is ultimately a flex, because I'm better than those of you who say, you talk about how the whole thing is a big waste of money and everything as a consequence of being a student again. I went back, because I started to identify market opportunities to do modifications to hardware, and then sell your work as craft through the Etsy system and everything. And I realized that I've been like rambling a bit, but about topics that really have nothing to do with what I wanted to talk about today. So 4 minutes in, and if I still have your attention and focus, I okay, one thing the internet does, and I see it all over the internet, is the fallacy of relative privation, which you can look up in Rational Wiki as not as bad as, and it's this idea that problems need to be, at least, so bad before anybody can complain about them or is allowed to complain about them at all. But, one aspect of internet culture that has always been sort of a blight on it from my perspective is just the sheer amount of rude, assholish behavior that passes through this ecosystem. And I used to think that it was, that with the bad came the good, because people, were more real on in cyberspace. They had a tendency to share their real opinions, and so you didn't have the kind of enforced, like, I have to respect big macho muscle builder guy who talks shit about everybody and is rude as fuck, because of the fact that you can kick my ass. At least I've got that. I've got the ability to, say what it is that I really feel in that situation, and have, the geography and the separation and the anonymity of all of it between me and them. And that's how I used to think about it. But now it's like I get people that are just, they will say whatever. I'll come in, I'll defend Justin Baldoni. I'll say that I don't think he did it. I say that, it does seem to me like he's got mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence, basically on a question on a Tech Dirt article. And then someone will come in and be like, imagine white knighting for a dude, and all I can think is, if that makes me a white knight, then everybody should be white knighting. Like, all I said was that, like, judges love documentation and video evidence, and it seems like Baldoni has tons and tons of it, and his lawyer is basically saying, "Hey, let's let it all, air." And based on reports that, Lively seems stressed in court because she realizes that, if he's going to stand up and fight like she didn't expect, then all of the truth is going to be out. And to be honest with you, I don't think he did it. But for saying that much, I get, basically accused of being a white knight, which it's like, if that makes me as such, then what the fuck is the problem with being one? If you're gonna do that, I think it's those of you who aren't that are the problem, and who are pointing the finger at us and laughing. But it's like this. It's like the internet has been this way for a long time. It's been a bunch of people behaving like totally mean-spirited fuckwads, and then when you call them out on it, they basically say, "No one cares. Why are you pretending to be a victim of all this and everything?" And it all harkens back, I think, to another topic that I wanted to talk about tonight, which is the fallacy of relative privation. The not as bad fallacy, which is to say that I will acknowledge that online harassment is not ultimately the biggest problem in the world, and that there are much bigger things, that I'm not the center of the universe, that there are people that, are suffering much worse fates than to be, made fun of by some jackass in cyberspace. This is not the biggest deal in the world, and, my suffering in that regard is not even unique, because, ask any woman in cyberspace, and she's had much reader stuff said about her and to her. Ask, you know, yeah, and there are tons of guys that could testify to this. You know, having gone through this, like, like, and having sit said that was, awful, awful, awful about them through the internet, and their direction, and said about them. But it's like, I'm not, I guess, in unique, in a position that, other people cannot relate to my, frustration and irritation. But the internet is a very ugly place because of this, and I wish this aspect of cyberspace would die in a fire where it belongs. Like, there's a great saying that was uploaded here to YouTube that I think is very apt to the situation at hand, which is that unnecessary cruelty is a hallmark of weak command. In other words, what purpose did it serve calling me a white knight? Did it make you feel smug and superior? I hope you're miserable, asshole. In response to all this, like, like, what? what purpose did it serve? It your own glorification? Oh, golly, hip hip hooray for that. I mean, I guess the whole world should exist for your own personal glory. It's like this didn't serve a good purpose. It didn't elevate the discussion. It didn't make the world a better place. It didn't serve a productive ends, and the only thing that it could have hoped to have served at all was drama, and that is the only thing that it could have potentially sparked. So what the fuck was the reason for it? It's not as if I'm an unruly employee who's stealing from the company and that I need to be, you need to summon your spine in order to do something about it. No, it's just I've got too much of a spine and I'm gonna harass people on the internet for no other purpose, but it makes me feel good. Like I think if there's one thing to be said about online harassment, it's is that it is truly actually shocking and astonishing how many people will go out to bat to pretend that this isn't ultimately a problem and that defend it and everything, and that it's a good thing that people be subjected to this kind of crap. You want to know what my position has long been about online harassment? You know, I'm not special. I'm suffering in a way a lot of people can relate to. At the end of the day, though, should people be subjected to this? Should they have to deal with this? Like, no, no, they should not. People should not have to suffer in this fashion and have this stuff, sent in their direction and have to endure, the wrath of the internet for no, especially since it serves no greater purpose. The one question too that, like I said, that bears in mind is why must our suffering be unique in any way or special in any way for it to be valid? You know, I'm sure there are a lot of people who can relate to being harassed by idiots online. Does that mean that does that mean that I have no right to complain? No. Fuck you. No, it doesn't. Like I don't understand. And the part that I think the part that is really I think the most pathetic is that it seems like there's a lot of men who have internalized this idea that being an asshole to other people is part of your manly essence. Like you've got to be as big of a dick as possible, otherwise people won't think that you've got balls. Like what else do you want me to say about it? I mean, why is this the hill that so much of cyberspace chose to die on anyways?